government in a majoritarian system, we would have run it or we feel like running. Precisely what Jack Dio doing now. Precisely.
Mhm.
That is what they would have done. So when they come and start talking, I always say, they have the regime in power now, and when they're putting this licks on Jack, and it's for the present regime.
Yeah.
It is for the present regime. They're saying Jack Doe is doing the right thing because, well, he don't even have the majority, he can manipulate the election here and there and so on and so on, and everybody be doing that here and there. But they are saying he got the Indian government, so what? The question is that the answer to Ghana's system? Once you got half and half, you can't rule like if you are Indian government doing what you like. The constitution allows you to do that. And that's why the constitution must change. It has to change for everybody to be at the table because all you can't come in no one seat majority and want to spend all the oil money, give who you want, and so on. That is where things like the teachers and so destroy the court system and all that. So the court people said it collapsed and all of that. So those are, I think that they are not answering it. If you were in power, how would you run this system today? That half and half now, you don't even have any majority, but because of how things work out, you can go out of 50, maybe the PNC. Now, please tell me, what would you do?
You heard it. You heard it here from Henry Jeffrey, and you know, I and I hope my friends Roy and Donald are listening because I think they're stifling their conscience. I agree with Jeffrey that Dev and Bishram and them, they're going against Jagan and Jagan communism really to endorse the model today by Jagdeo and these people, which is a model of ethno-political domination and some capitalism thrown with it and so on. That's what they wanted all the time, and they get it. So they want to, they don't want to throw Jagan, you know, and saying he's a nice guy, he wasn't corrupt, he wasn't this, he was that, but his one mistake was communism. And that's where they get in trouble because you can't say it was a mistake when you put it in real time. As you ask, what would you have done? Jagan compensated for his communism with the ethnic mobilization. Because even though Indians may not have liked communism and they may not like the communist Jagan, Jagan gave them a kind of ethnic security. And I think both sides are being dishonest. Roy and them don't want to admit that Jagan did ethnic mobilization, right? And the other side don't want to agree that although Jagan was a communist, he still did the ethnic mobilization thing, and really is a confirmation of it for these in power today. But have you
No,
picked up
no,
your copy of Ciceran's?
not. I got something, but I have not gone through it as yet. I
Right.
think that Sitaran was saying this kind of thing for a long time, and everything I hear other people are writing about it, I haven't seen anything new.
Exactly.
I've seen nothing new. So, I mean, other people who have read it are saying things, and I don't see what is new there. And therefore, I mean, I got other things are doing too, and all these things. But so I have not heard anything new. Well, I will get to it, but
Right. There's nothing new. I think this, you would find this interesting.
yes, well, we will see. I mean, because nobody has even reviewed that. I
Right.
start with people reviewing things, then I try to go in the thing. I don't try to go through things like everybody want to read every page or all that. When I see how others are and see. But and I look at what Citroen was saying this kind of thing for long. Indeed, the letter that Vincent published about Jagan and the communists, now, I don't think it's there because they would have said, because, and anyway, that book could have been a thing for long.
by that time,
Yeah.
right?
So effectively, no, I haven't seen anything particularly, and so no, I'll get there. I'll get there. But
Right. I mean, his book on Jack Campbell and so
yeah,
forth.
yeah,
It's the
yeah.
same
Was way
thesis.
back. That's
It's the
long
same
time ago.
thesis. It's a continuation of the same thesis. It's not anything that is
Yeah, yeah,
new and so forth. But I think as with the Burnhamites,
yeah.
it is the same with the Jagonites. It's a difficulty to open your leader to a dispassionate kind of analysis. And I think both sides do their leaders a disservice
Of course.
by not opening it. I think, which brings us to the rigging that Hami made a statement at the forum. You heard it. I heard Hami's statement. I was not about to go tearing the hair that is not on my head off, because I was saying much ado about nothing. And in the context in which Hami was speaking, I think some people went too much overboard. But that's my thought. But you have weighed in on the whole question of rigging, and I think that's where the conversation has to go. It's not so much about whether PNC, the rig, and Hami was part of the rigging. It's the way in which rigging has become now part of the modus operandi of our politics, and that the PPP is now benefiting from the rigging. But they are holding on to the old narrative, that is to give the rigging a single party face, and by extension, a single ethnicity face, and preventing us from really getting in to the dangers of rigging as we move into this petrol state. And you have been saying that, harkening back again to the old issue that we need constitutional change or reform in order to fix the system, to prevent, if you will, the incentive for rigging. Because the incentive to rigging is to get a majority that you don't have. Over to you.
Yes. And yeah, I read Hami thing, and I had to because I've been doing some work on constitutional reform. So it wasn't really a Hami talk about rigging, but when he's going to say, we gotta wait until we get nice people come up to run this system and
Yeah.
we gonna go to church. I say, what is this I'm hearing here? Now, this politicians, you no matter which church you sell them to, once they get into the business of competitive politics, businessmen too, once they get into business of competitive business, they do all manner of jiggery puggery to sell life. Now you can't wait. You have fixed the system for the worst man. The worst politician. The good man, I think was Plato or Aristotle, said, don't need laws to even act good. But the people that need laws are the bad people. Politicians are in a competitive thing, and they need laws because the system is such that it is forcing them to compete on in all sorts of ways. Now, so that was what drove me to Hami's piece, that he seems to be thinking that essentially, although there's a whole lot of other contradiction here. Let's do this, but let's go to church at the same time. I know you're going to do that and you're still going to church rather than. But that is not the point. But the point about rigging, as I said just now, democracy is just a means of making decisions. You can have a democracy without any moral content, without the virtues. I quoted Huntington, maybe the chief thing on all that, and a VDM thing. That shows quite clearly that you can have elections. Maduro has elections. Putin has elections. Everybody having elections these days. You can have elections and have none of the moral virtues of a democracy. But they say you are a democracy. So Guyana, for instance, is said to be an elected democracy. I mean, it's only the election might have been free and fair. Everything there is all you are. You're not a liberal democracy, like say Barbados or so on. You're not a liberal democracy where you have the virtues of a democracy. People have rights. It's inclusive. Those things are absent. You are under your elective democracy minus. Go and check it. The minus mean you are almost at a dictatorship. So when they start running and talk about democracy, I have fun doing that at Babujan. I said, you're talking to the people who you have convinced that democracy is a good on its own. But democracy is not good on its own. Democracy must carry the virtues of a democracy. And therefore, just using a system to elect some people because you got a majority, yeah, you might call it democracy. Modi is have democracy in India, but look at problem. So I'm saying that when he keeps saying that, it's because the people in this country has been socialized to believe democracy is a good by itself. They're not seeing democracy as properly used. It's essentially a decision-making process by the majority. So if I say you are why you think you got Bill of Rights if democracy was all this good? You got Bill of Rights.
There you go.
People have Bill of Rights that no government can touch, no democratic authority government. That's a Bill of Rights. You gotta go to the court for the, America got Bill of Rights about carrying arms. I think, no, you are there, yeah. You can't just move there. No government can't just go tomorrow and pass a law so the American people can't carry arms. They get dry. Why you think a whole lot of people want to change it and can't change and how much you can't even change how much arms are with you. Men want cannon in the back of their house. They go, and this sort of thing. So effectively, if democracy was all that, why people put in, you remember it's 18 Bill of Rights America has that. Because people look and said, boss, this thing how it going, you got a lot of majoritarian parts of this whole story. Well, the Senate, everybody got two and so but the smaller states and says, we fear that this majoritarian people can make some rules and screw up a whole lot of things. They can run in your house. So we want rules, Bill of Rights that say you can't come in my house. No government can pass a rule to say you can come in my house. So they got Bill of Rights. So that majoritarianism is not the end all and do all, like the PPP thinks. As we go to the teachers' discourse, you'll see that it's the modus operandi. I am government, therefore I can determine what I pay. That is not true. The Constitution said these people got unions. You can't just say, those are my, and this is gonna end up. This is not gonna end up easy if this done properly. If the PPP is smart, they can get away with this one easy. If they go along with the same pushing, you're gonna see where this will end. For this, you can't, for instance, they can't just say, we have a budget and our priorities. You shouldn't have no priority until you spoke to me as the union. Your priority should include my workers and have a right to negotiate for them. You can't create priorities and say, I have a priority to spend all the money, go without food. It's not making sense. So your priority should come after you negotiate with the worker. They're important part of your arrangement. The Constitution said they got rights and so on. And it's not government alone. This is why the teachers do this, because people must try to understand it's not government alone. It's employers generally should know where there are unions, where there are not unions. This government should long time ago, since 1997, have a labor court so that That was the next reform things after all the other laws. I left it there. I said, yeah, labor court, because you have to have workers out there who may not have unions, but feel that they are badly paid or think they can go to a labor court and say, look, I'm being discriminated against, or not only discriminated, but not taken into consideration. So effectively, that is it. We are in a situation here now where the PPP and so on, they want to maintain the same kind of dictatorial, they are alone. And people in this country believe that. And your government didn't help that situation. They come in and they do the same thing. Sometimes people tell me, Jack, do I say, all right, I hear you. But you come in and do the same thing. You're meeting the workers, you're not talking to them and so on. But you can't set priorities on your own. You don't have that right to do so. You people got unions, you got to talk to them. When you come to a conclusion of what you will pay them after you discourse, then you set your priorities on the remainder of what is there. You have got no budget to just go and say, I get extra mix and I'm going to spend let the workers take a walk. More or less, that is what they do.
Jeffrey, and I'm coming to, you've touched on the teacher strike and we're getting there. You made some very important points there. Certainly at the time, after they had written the American Constitution, there was no Bill of Rights in there. And it's Jefferson and them argue, and there were over 400 proposals to go in. We played down to 10. And the argument that the so-called anti-Bill of Rights people are saying, there's nothing in the Constitution says that the government will take away those rights. And Jefferson them arguing exactly as you are saying. Put it on paper. There is no guarantee.
Yeah.
And so therefore, when I hear my comrades who say, well, this constitution that we get is a good constitution, I don't argue, all constitutions will be good until somebody make it bad, And so therefore, as you have said, our study of politics through the centuries have brought us to this point that you have to have rules, not for the best of us, but for the worst of us. And the other observation I want to make about the Americans, they wanted the small states, as part of the New Jersey plan, did not want a one-person presidency. We look at places like Switzerland and so on now with multi-party presidency, and we think that is a 20th century thing. But back then, the small states were saying, we fear a King George era. And they had in there a multi-person presidency. Of course, the big states voted it down and so on. The small states got, as you said, they got proportional representation in terms of representation in Congress, and so they backed down on the presidency thing. But it's interesting that some of these ideas that we're discussing now are not new ideas when it comes to governance. So I'm so glad that you really reference the Bill of Rights and thing. And I think maybe it's South Africa, I think, has a Bill of Rights in their constitution that is comparable to the Americans.
We got chapter 2 with some things, but it is not as pungent, poignant. We, chapter 2 in our constitution, I think, give us a whole lot of rights, but they say it's not justiciable.
It's not justiciable, right? Yes.
And all that kind of thing. But these people think justiciable. I don't know if it's going to make much difference here when the court ain't got this and the court falling apart, but at least it's justiciable.
Which brings us to the role of the court in the teacher strike. I know you have been an observer of this thing, both as a scholar but also as a practitioner, as a minister, as one who has had to deal with these issues, and you've told us over and over again how you dealt with the 1999 arbitration issue, how you dealt with the teachers thing vis-a-vis Father Malcolm Rodriguez and so forth, so that you did not get yourself in the tangle that the present Minister of Labor has found themselves in. In steps the court. What's the significance of that, Henry Jeffrey?
Well, what you have is an autocratic government that's saying really to the teachers, we decide, well, you take a walk. No, that is what they're saying. Forget it. That is what you get in, this is where you get in. And they would not have collective bargaining, which is against the Constitution. And this is important to go after the teachers. You know what it demonstrates to everybody in this country? That at the end of the day, you got to keep your powder dry. You got to keep it. Don't, this is not just a matter of gaff. Yeah. But you got to keep your powder. You got prepared to walk the streets. You got prepared to do that. You got prepared to do a whole lot of things. Don't fool yourself, Jagan. I see people cursing out Jagan and say he did this. But Jagan kept his powder dry. Burn up sugar cane. He do all sort of thing for decades. I ain't quarreling with him. I'm saying you believe your democratic rights was stolen, which it was in a sense, the voting thing for good reason from my standpoint. I told him that. But so you took to all these things and doing all of them to thinking that you will retrieve your rights. You'll soon realize it's not going to happen. You cease and you ease up. The question, so effectively, you have to always keep your powder dry. You got to be prepared to do everything. And that is why the teachers were able to get to where they, to gain. The thing is not simple, because if it's not, indeed, that's perhaps why the court took them serious too.
Yeah.
Because everybody's run to the court, but the court see now they have problem on the road. You got a whole lot of children, you got people home, you got the court guys. No. The regime has lost control of this.
Yeah.
The regime has lost control of this. But now it's in the court. We have to look for the things the court will define. The court can define a whole lot of things. For instance, all right, when does a strike break down? Remember, I can't be on the street and the strike can break down and the discourse can break down. I'm on the streets, by definition, what I am saying, according to the industrial legislation, once one party said break down, it breaks down. So if I'm on the street, it has broken down. The discourse between me, the next case is conciliation. And the Ministry of Labor should facilitate that. It's not for you to say then it's not broken down and then said, we are prepared to talk. If we have been talking for a period, so how long this period must be? When is things considered broken down? The rules, I think what the labor law say is that once a party is so determined. Remember that the trade union rules are essentially to stop strike, to prevent strike.
Yeah.
In a legal and proper way. You said breakdown, let me go to an conciliator. Conciliator, we can't speak to us and we agree, then let's go then to arbitrators. So effectively, that's what it's intended to be. So it's important there in the courts. And I think this process mustn't end without some clear notion of these things I've been talking about. How long you got to go on and who determines when something is broken down. What is the format? What is the format for the teachers' union should want this? Not just you coming up with some money, and I come up with one. There must be a format like for you to say This is, and teachers have that expectations every year. Jagan, they come up with a formula, you know. Jagan had said that uh, the rate of inflation plus growth on the economy should determine salaries. Well, you know, if the produce don't know what is happening.
They gotta send the rate of inflation low.
Them teachers get nominated $1,000
Yeah.
You know, even if you put it not at GDP but the GNP, it's a whole lot of money. But remember, in around 1994 or something like that, before he died, Chad Jagan had to pay a lot. He had to pay almost 70% in public servant salary because of the growth of the economy. That was the theory. Yeah,
Right.
Growth in the economy and the inflation rate. So if you add that up now, God knows what would happen. So yeah, so you should have some sort of formula. They're going and say we want a 3-year deal, but in these times, all right, great, but they must base it on some kind of formula of how this happens. So teachers can wake up 2 years before the pay and have some sort of expectation of what it is that they can have. So they will have. So it's important that we went to the court. It's important because now if this breakdown, which it's if the teachers hold the line might well do, by the way, the court was reactionary because if the court was a mediator, the court should have mediated. They could have mediated and try to reconcile the problems. And if the court couldn't do it there, or the people they put there, the mediators they put local, and they should have tried to deal with at that level, but they didn't do that. All right, you can't get everything. They go back and send them back to speak when the speaking was done. I was on this street because I can't speak no more. But they send them back to speak. All right, so they send them back to force base. So they went back to force base. Now, after that, you got second base, the conciliator or whatsoever. And after that, you will have a arbitrator. And I'll tell you something, all that is under the vigilance of the court, under the view of the court. And that is a good thing because it does that now for almost every single trade union who wishes to do that in Guyana. The court said these are the ways to go. This is the way you must go. You can't just walk out and tell me nothing. This is it. You got precedent that is set there. So it's good. It is good, but I tell you, they only go to the court because the teachers kept their powder dry.
Because the teachers kept their powder dry. Henry Jeffrey here tonight, and I think it's a very important point he ended there with, that whatever is happening now is under the gaze of the court, and I think that's a very important development. You know, we've had to contend with some people, even among opposition supporters, even among the teachers who are skeptical, who felt that nothing was gained here. And it really points, Jeffrey, to the kind of the lack of confidence in the institutions, which we discussed there a year and a half ago when we were talking about the IRI poll. The extent to which our citizens have lost confidence in the institutions, hence the need for constitutional refreshing and repositioning, to bearing in mind that people do not have confidence in the institutions as they function, and that even when the institution, in this instance the court, is really on their side, that skepticism, for want of a better term, kicks in. Your comment on that?
Government is all powerful. They can do anything.
Exactly.
That is part of Guyanese psyche, because everything else has been like that. Remember, and You got to remember too, all of these people are running government. Won't they ever lived under dictatorship?
Yeah.
They don't know anything else.
Yeah.
So when you tell them about democracy, it's always to read something in book how it actually operates, and so they don't know. All they know is Burnham dictator from just a couple of years with Jagan, maybe, but even that was only settled with 2020 rats, and here we are again, a dictatorship. So effectively, and the people who are running it, almost every single one of them, maybe except with Ralph Ramkaran, who lived a few years doing law, and it is dictatorship there now. And it's easy for you to sort of think and blame them, like, you got to sit back and say, but all these people know is dictatorship. And that's how government's supposed to run. I do what I want. And, well, but it's worse because you went to Russia.
Yeah.
So.
No, Jeffrey, you're quite right. I mean, I'm sure that you have been doing the same in an informal way, informally been really trying to, talk to teachers. Some of them contacted me, some of them I was asked to talk to, and so on. And it stopped me my tracks when I'm trying to say to the teachers, but you have won a big victory.
Yes.
And it's not you. Well, as a teacher, when you're not getting through to your students, eh?
Yeah.
And then I had to pull back and say, but this is not about them. It is what they've experienced. The government is all powerful in their heads,
Yeah.
Which brings me, Jeffrey, to the rebuke. It wasn't veiled at all by President Lula. And I think it was a man on this program who said Lula could do it because he's not begging Guyana government for anything. The CARICOM people come here, they saw the teachers, they said nothing. Lula came here, he saw the teachers, he talked about unionism, he talked about workers in this country, and talked about that same jargon formula there of the rate of inflation and growth. And 75% of the workers in this country, how their wages are being calculated. And very importantly, he talked about the marrying or lack thereof of investment in human development and infrastructural development. Were you shocked by Lula's candidness? And if not, why not? And if so, why so?
Well, because Lula is a old trade unionist. First of all, Lula, I think he went to prison or some things like that. So Lula ain't gonna make any. First of all, you depend on Lula to defend you against Venezuela. So he got a whole lot of leverage. You're not going to make any noise about that, I think. And he's going to state what are the principles of trade unionism and all that. That's what give him his bread and butter in the first place. He grew up in that. That's how he started up. So you are not going to get him to come here when workers are saying, and he knows that that's what's happening here. He got people here saying these people don't want collective bargaining. Well, that was he killed Lula. He couldn't follow him because he said, what? That's impossible. They don't want collective bargaining. It's impossible. And I'm not going to go anywhere and don't say that if that is the truth. And so I am not particularly, given his history and so on, I'm not particularly surprised that he did it. I think the government also might be surprised that he did it. But Lula's old-time trade union is, that's where he came from. He's not going to sit back down and say nothing in a blatant disregard for the rules of trade unionism and all of that. So no, I was not particularly surprised.
You're not surprised at all. Jeffrey, our friend Ralph this weekend weighed in on Jagan's attitude to the Federation of 58 to 62. And he accused those who have criticized Jagan of relying, Clem Sichoran, Yakuz Clem, of relying on Jagan's 56 speech and Kwayana's response as his source for saying that Jagan did not want to take Indians, did not want to take Guyana into the Federation because Indians would have been a minority. And for years, I have had that tangle with Ralph. And I don't think there's anything that they could point to definitively to say Jagan opposed the Federation on this ground, except that he thought that it was, I think he wrote that the British was a way of recolonizing the Caribbean after colonialism and so on. What's your reading of Jagan's attitude to the Federation?
I got two-pronged thing to that. First of all, yes, Jagan gets most of his votes from Indians, but I don't know that he would have gone into any federation that would have taken away government of Guyana from him based on the same Westminster model.
Yeah.
Right? So he would have gone and he would have still be in government. But indeed, I think, but the other side is that what influence he would have had in the situation when he is, remember, Jagan is an old communist. He already write people and tell them how he's committed to communist. So he might have had other good reasons to want more leverage to act. Because if you gone in that federation, they can make, and it's majoritarian, isn't there too?
Yes.
In a way, even if you can say, well, according to people, how much population, you can go there, but it will still be like you always wanted to say no to certain things that the people are saying yes to. And all of these people are capitalists for the most part. All of them, they have no thing. It's later down, we end up in Manly and so on in Barbados trying to be a bit more radical. And most, well, we had Bernard and them in Antigua. No, in Grenada. But the point is, so Jagan must don't want to tie up with all these capitalists because he's gonna get screwed, he's gonna be screwed down. So I don't know. I have thought of that too. I've said, yes. But what would this have done to his racial majority? How would it affect it? Because he'd still stay in government here, particularly now that they would have had a leverage on him. They would have said, okay, and so on. You might have had migration of a lot of black people and so on. And for all you know, because it could have turned. But I'm saying he also had another reason that he don't want to water down his thing with the Soviet Union and that lot that he has already committed to. And he couldn't go write a letter like that and don't tell people in the Federation. You know. So
both the ideological and the racial reality coming into play here. And as I said, Ralph was taken on that. I mean, I don't see the other PPP leaders going there because there's not very much room. But Ralph has never been able to point to anything to show that Jagan opposition to the Federation was really grounded in anything beyond the suspicion of his racial and so on. Henry Jeffrey here tonight on Politics 101, talking about Dr. Jagan. It's the month of his anniversary, both his death anniversary and his birth anniversary. And of course, we talked about the teacher strike and the whole question of rigging that is now back on the front burner. Jeffrey, before we go, we didn't plan to talk about this, but I'm sure you are picking up and following what's happening in Haiti. And I'm shaking my head because, Haiti never goes away. never, 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 never goes away. Your thoughts on what's happening there?
But as you say, it is a problem all right on its own. I heard that the Prime Minister now saying going to resign,
Yeah.
that he will go. They, why you say about Haiti? Because there are those who are saying, well, you have to set up a system of Haitians themselves to do this kind of a thing. David, to be truthful, I'm like you. I am saying yes, but they got to be backed up by real force. You can't just set up a group of Haitians to run Haiti, and then you still have all those people out there with guns all over the place. You have to, the Americans must be big. That's why the CARICOM, all them saying they got to have some force on the ground to liberate the government, regardless of it's Asian or not, from fear and so on, and bring back this society to some kind of equilibrium. And then you go to elections. But that election thing got to take some time because of what has happened there. And so my view is yes, Haiti must essentially be run by Haitians. But you have the international community owe it to them to have some sort, outside of aid and money and all that, have some sort of security there for the government to operate in a proper way.
Yeah.
I can't see it any different. You can't just leave all the armed men on the street to say they're gonna run things. And no, I don't think that would work. You got to bring back things to some sort of level of normalcy and allow Haitians to run their own story. As I'm reading that, that Haiti is like Israel and the Palestinians. Them things are going away. The solutions are, I mean, it's a different context because, I mean, it's an ethnic thing down there. It's a different kind of problem in it. But there are problems that you have to keep on until they are solved. You can't just walk away from them. Like in Israel, where the British almost caused the confusion, they were allowing everybody to come there and settle, chase away the Palestinians from their land. And then everybody, because it's become so intractable and so they ease off. And democratic governments change. And then the next thing you know, you have what you have today. But I think in Haiti, you have to have some transition force down there to help the situation through. And the government, whosoever the government be.
Yeah, I completely support that. I am wary of this, of an election at all costs. And that the election, you have an election within the context of instability and lack of security. I think you have to have a transition period so that the election makes sense. Yes. That when the government arises out of the election, it is within the context of a stable situation. You have to have a transition from what is happening there now. Before you go to an election, you can't have an election that make any sense under that thing. I mean,
because you got government can close down the election booth.
That's right.
And force people to vote in different ways, do all sort of things. That you got to come back to some serious level of normalcy to deal with the election. Elections to have what you will call a democratic election. People have to do this of their free will. Yeah. Oh, you got any free will there with gunmen all over the place? So and therefore you need some sort of a force down there to bring back that normalcy with the Asian people as the government.
Yeah. And I think CARICOM, I mean, I like many others were skeptical when I heard of the Kenyans come in and so on and so forth. All right. But I think CARICOM is probably best place. I think the Asian people could trust CARICOM as our brothers and their brothers and sisters and so on. But you have to have that transition. I don't see it any
Yes. Yeah.
Henry Jeffrey here tonight. Thank you very much, my brother.
Thank you very much for having me, David, and to your audience for having me in your homes.
Thank you, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here tonight weighing in on a number of issues, and we ended there with Haiti. You know, Guyana. I remember Walter Rodney on the streets of Guyana in 1979 saying one of the things he feared was that Guyana could become another Haiti. And that was what, 79, and what we know, 45 years ago. And I think we still have that fear. You see, when the government breaks down and the government pushes its citizenry to the point where the system breaks down, there is no order, there is no a sense of legitimacy from the people's standpoint of the government, then you get into the state that Haiti is in. And when I listen to Hamilton Green, I think that's what you're hearing, that once again, one side is pushing the other side to the brink, you know? And we've been having this back and forth for too long. So in many regards, we are not far off from Haiti. And then when a government loses its legitimacy, its only resort is to force. And all of us are opposed to the government using force. And so we have to have our own transition in Guyana. But we have a recalcitrant government which believes that because it came to power through a certified election. Note I say certified because the elections were certified. Nobody can quarrel with that. But as the Americans said, it was a disputed election and the government was installed. So you can have a certified government that was installed. And I keep telling people it's not the PNC that said the government was installed. It's the Americans. And they ought to know. And so therefore, as we look at Haiti, and we have to try to do our best, because Haiti is in our region, it's our family. We also have to look at what's happening in Guyana. And the hypocrisy sometimes, you know, you have Irfan Ali flying out to Jamaica to chair a meeting, CARICOM meeting on Haiti. So, you know, you're going there and saying that you're sorry for the Haitian people and you're trying to help them, but you're treating their brothers and sisters, meaning the Africans in Guyana, in the same way as they are treated in Haiti. The hypocrisy. The hypocrisy. And it's not just Irfan Ali, but all the other governments in the region who've not been nice, who have not been nice to Haitian immigrants. Whether it's the Barbadian government or the Guyanese government or whoever, they've not been nice to Haitian immigrants. And perhaps that removes some legitimacy from them as far as a transition in Haiti to some period of normalcy. But I'm saying if there is any quote-unquote external group, it's CARICOM. So I'm not opposed to the election that they're planning, but I'm saying I do not see what benefit an election is going to have in a period of confusion. It was the same thing that led me in 2020 as we were going through the 5 months impasse to say, here we are at this point, total confusion. We took 5 months to declare the results, not because somebody did something. It's because the PPP went to the court and said they see rigging. And the court, instead of telling them come back with an election petition, the court tells GCOM you can stop the rigging or the attempt to rig. GCOM then used a 4-3 majority to then order an unconstitutional recount. And that is what led the thing to 5 months. It's not nothing anybody did. And the court said to the PPP, you see rigging, do what all countries do. come to be with a petition after the declaration of the results. So the court opened up by saying to GCOM, look, you can fix something that you see before the results. And GCOM went to the extreme of having a recount. And the recount itself was unconstitutional. Because what it means, if we go by that precedence, is that in future elections, all somebody has to do is to go to the court and say, we see an attempt to rig, and the court will tell GCOM, do what you're going to do. And GCOM can order recount as they did. Therefore, there's no need for petition anymore. And so that recount was unconstitutional. But even though it was unconstitutional, in a backhand way, it was able to expose the actual rigging, not the attempt at rigging. What it was able to expose was that the rigging had already occurred before the alleged attempt to rig. And so that 5 months, I'm taking my time. I don't write as quickly these days as I used to in the old days. But I'm putting my thoughts down on paper on that period because I think we have not really examined that 5-month period. And the point I was making in that 5-month period, I said, look, for us not to break down into anarchy and dictatorship, let us use this opportunity to bring the two sides together and to say to them, form an interim government. And I suggested that the interim government should be in there for 18 months to 3 years. And that one of its major function would be to clean up the electoral machinery. And I said, for continuity, since Granger was already there as president, let him be the interim president. And they jump all over me. They jump all over me. They said, David Hines wanted to block up the election, and he said, block up the boxes. All I was saying is that, look, forget about those boxes. Those boxes are trouble. It showed us. And indeed, the boxes show trouble. And I was saying the way to get around the trouble is for the two sides to come together in an interim government. And just for continuity, let Granger continue as president. And that interim government should see as its principal task the cleaning up of the electoral system, constitutional reform, and to bring our country back to normalcy. Had we done that in 2020, we are now in 2024. Had we put in place an interim government to clean up the country, we would have been here now, hopefully, with a country that is cleaned up, with institutions that are ready to work, and then we could go back to election. We didn't do that, and now we are going back to an election with the same nastiness. All the things that the recount exposed, they're all still there, and we are going to a new election. So we are going to a new election in the same confusion, and that's what I'm warning in Haiti against. Going to an election in confusion. We are going to go to an election in confusion. I don't see the PPP agreeing to any electoral reform unless they're forced to. And the opposition has to decide whether it wants to force them to. Is either the opposition force them or external people come in and force them. I don't think the external people are ready yet. The Americans have been hemming and hawing. But I don't think the Americans feel that their interests are threatened right now by this government, and they're not ready to come to the table right now. That could change next week or next month. But I'm saying as I sit now, I don't see the Americans ready to come. The CARICOM is not going to bring anybody to the table. So with the absence of external people bringing them to the table, it is left now to the opposition. And the opposition has to show that it wants to take on that task of forcing this government to come to the table and clean up the electoral machinery and the governance machinery. Because God forbid we go to another election under the same conditions. I don't think it will end nice. Rowley said the last time that he didn't think 2020 would end nice. And in many regards, he was correct. There was no big fighting up and broken up. But look at what we got. Look at the government we got. This ended nice, the PPP government that we got now. Rowley's right. It didn't end nice. And I am predicting now, unless we clean up the confusion before the next election ain't going to end nice. And that cleaning up, I'm repeating, has to be done by external forces in conjunction with the forces inside of Guyana, or by the forces inside of Guyana by themselves. The PPP is not about to clean up the confusion. They are beneficiaries of the confusion. And so therefore, as we begin to think about elections, and we are talking about Haiti, elections held in confusion do not bring democratic outcomes. And that's what I'm saying. The 2020 election was confusion. We declared and certified a government that arose out of confusion. And look what we get. The PPP government today is a creature of the confusion. And the 5 months in 2020 brought all the contradictions and confusion of our post-colonial experience. Everything came crashing down in those 5 months. Both major forces said to each other, "You're rigging." One said, "You attempt to rig." The other one said, look. We do something that was never done before. We open the boxes. And GECOM is now between a rock and a hard place. First of all, you order a recount, which is unconstitutional. And because you ordered a recount, it meant that the coalition could not go in and the PPP get in as a result of your recount. But the very recount showed that you have certified a government on tainted votes, thousands of tainted votes. That is why GECOM does not want, no matter how Vincent Alexander, the other two commissioners, beg, they do not want an investigation, an internal. We're not talking about a COI, we're not talking about court case, we're talking about GECOM doing a review of its own work. GECOM doesn't want to do a review because any review will have to show that the police showed them on 2 separate batches that were sent to them that there were people who voted who were not here. I don't care if it's one person. It's tantamount to rigging. So to tell me that what the police said about people not being able to vote, it wouldn't change the result. First of all, the result is a 1-seat majority. That could be changed quickly by a couple of boxes. So that's the first thing that is wrong here. The second thing that is wrong is that in a place like Guyana, it is not whether it will change the results. It is whether, in fact, the elections were rigged or not rigged. That is the issue for us in Guyana. And so, Haiti, Guyana. And I am predicting from now, if we have to go back to elections under the present conditions, it will not end well. Old people say, Watanake we me lap 2 times. And I am sure the supporters of the coalition, the opposition supporters, are saying the same thing. Watanake we me lap 2 times. They are not going to take a second dose of what was meted out to them in 2020. I am sure of that. So we have a big task before us in Haiti, and we have a big task before us in Guyana. We have to change the conditions under which the next elections are going to be held, or else it would not end well. Not because I say that. Who am I? I'm just a normal citizen. But it's because history has taught us that. History has taught us that. And it is in the interest of all of us to ensure that the elections are well. How can you be looking at the voters list of 700 and something thousand people? I mean, what are you telling us? What are you telling me? Why would you not want to change that? The court has said you can't disenfranchise people. No, I vote. I vote at elections in Guyana because I could. I live outside of Guyana some of the time, but I go back to Guyana, I get registered. But I am saying, if denying me the right to vote because I live outside of Guyana is what it takes for a clean voters list, then do it. Then do it. Then do it. I'm saying you can do both. Those of us who live between Guyana and outside, we can continue to vote. Once we are in Guyana, I am not selling my ID to nobody. I am there at every election and I vote. And that can continue to happen while those who are not there and have no intentions of going there. There are lots of Guyanese overseas who are on that voters list who have no interest in Guyana, who have no interest in going back and vote, and who wouldn't mind you take the name off the list. And the parliament can do that. The National Assembly can do it. They can pass laws to ensure that those who are outside of Guyana and have no interest in voting in Guyana, they can pass laws to get those people off the voters list. So why is the PPP opposed to something as basic as that? Why are they opposed? Because it is a means of rigging. I mean, they talk about PNC rigging back in the old days was crude. People vote 15 and 20 times. The rigging today is sophisticated. And that's what the PPP doesn't want us to talk about. We are not going to stop rigging at Guyana's election until the incentive for rigging is legally taken away. There are too many incentives to rig, and there are too many opportunities to rig. So there are incentives to rig because you have to get a majority in a situation where neither group has a majority, a built-in majority. And so there's an incentive to rig to get that majority. The PNC can say, look, we have showed our hands. We don't intend to rig. We intend to build coalitions. We tend to reach out to the small parties. Whether they treat the small parties nice is another story. But anyhow, at least the PNC has said, the way we intend to get a majority is to form a coalition. The PPP said, we're not going into no coalition. So what's your next bet? What's your next option? Is to rig. Is to rig. You don't want a coalition. You can't go in black people's place and raid their votes. It can't happen. Because they won't pay you no mind. Not many of them will pay you mind to give you the 1 seat or 2 seat you want. But the PNC will not allow it. They will not allow it, and they should not allow it. They should not allow it. Because they can go into your area and buy your votes and bully your votes. It's one thing to go, hold your meeting, make your argument, and people willingly say, I'm going to vote for you. But it's another thing to go into people's constituency, carry money, and try to bully them and entice them and bribe them with money and so on and so forth. I'm saying if you're coming to me village and do it, I ain't allowing you to do that. I ain't allowing you to do that. You can come in, hold your meeting, make your argument, and who want to vote for you of their free will. But if you're coming in there to treat my people like slaves by doling out trinkets to them, I ain't allowing you to do that. And if I ain't allowing you to do it in me village, I ain't not allowing you to do it in no other village. Insofar as I have some influence. So you can't get it by bullying and bribing. And I rather suspect that the PPP is not even interested in that. They want to use that so that when they rig, they will say, look, we get crossover vote. Because if you want black people crossover vote willingly, you won't treat them teachers the way you're treating them. Because you're telling them you can't pay them. You're going to thief their money. You're going to take away their money because they strike. And then you go in next year and say, please come and vote for me. What kind of nonsense is that? You bullying them, you beating them up, taking away their money, don't want to give them a raise, and then you're saying you're going next year, or whenever you call the election, and say, vote for me. Vote for me because I beat you up. Vote for me because I take away your money when you've been on strike. So I don't think the PPP is necessarily interested in any crossover vote in a legal, normal way. They want to use that mask of a crossover vote in order to hide rigging. In order to hide the fact that the immigrant vote that is coming in from the other places, Venezuela and so on, that they're going to be able to steal those votes. So all the signs of rigging point to the PPP. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes in the PNC. I don't belong to that party. But I'm saying what I see openly is that the PNC has said our option to get a majority is that we are going to go with a coalition. At least that was their story up to the last election. North will have to say explicitly whether you want to go down that road still. And from what he has said, one can think that that's the road he's going down. So if the PNC is saying we are going to get a majority via coalition, it means, therefore, that one can deduce that the PNC is not necessarily interested in rigging as a first resort. The PPP is saying no to coalition, which means rigging has to be their first resort. And that's where we are. So, brothers and sisters, we have a lot of work to do, and we will continue to do our work here on Politics 101 because we see where consciousness takes us. We see where consciousness. It is consciousness that took the teachers to this point. It is consciousness that took them. And sometimes we say we talk too much, but talking is a prerequisite for consciousness. It's not just the talking, it's what you talk. And we have to say to the teachers, you've won. You've made the institution, one important institution of this country, react to you. You've created the conditions for change. It is whether we have the appetite for change. I want to thank you all very much. I want to thank all of you. I noticed the audience on YouTube has grown tremendously. 2/3 of the audience tonight was on YouTube. Please like our YouTube channels. Politics 101 with Dr. David Hines, Hindsight with Dr. David Hines. Those are our 2 YouTube channels. They're also our 2 Facebook pages. Politics 101 with Dr. David Hines and Hindsight with Dr. David Hines, both on Facebook and on YouTube. And I want to congratulate those of you who have joined us on YouTube. You have now become a majority of our audience. So we have options. All right? And we are growing our audience every night. Every night we are growing our audience. Thank you very much. Please go and follow all our pages on Facebook and on YouTube so that we can continue this mission that we are on. As I said, this here is necessary work. This is necessary work. And we're going to continue to do this work because we're already seeing the benefit. Thanks very much. And I'll see you all tomorrow night, same time, same place.